The next step for me in my exploration was to go deeper, and that meant finding out about hypnosis. But the first step in learning about hypnosis was to be hypnotised myself. I arranged to meet one of Britain's leading past life regressionists, Tony Ray. He uses hypnosis to enable people to access what seem to be past life memories, and he's uncovered some remarkable stories. He also claims to have produced the regressionist's Holy Grail, a subject speaking in a foreign language that they apparently hadn't previously learned. But today he was going to try and hypnotise me, and I wasn't going to be an easy subject. Tony, there's a couple of things I'm kind of concerned about. Thank you. First one was, no one's ever managed to hypnotise me, which is, but I'm not being belligerent about it, because I would love someone to be able to. Sure. I'd love to have the experience, but I just wanted to warn you that if it doesn't work, it's not you, it's me.
Okay, no problem. Right, well, okay. There are two golden rules, Jane, that you want it to happen and that you allow it to happen.
Okay.
Okay, the only two reasons for failure, one of them is a four-letter word, and that word is fear.
Right.
I'm sure that's not going to be the case here.
Okay.
But the other thing we have to be careful of is that if you start to overanalyse what's being said to you, and really sort of trying to work it all out in your head, what does this mean? Is he implying this? Then you're going to block it off for yourself.
Right. I mean, maybe that's been my problem. I mean, sure. I'm all right at meditation and I've done visualisation and stuff. Right. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Cool. Yeah, and just go with the flow. So Jane, as I touch you on the forehead, start to let all that tension just go out of your head and neck. As if the head's feeling so heavy, and just allow it to fall even further if you wish into a really comfortable and relaxed position. Just let it sink even further down now. That's excellent.
Tony had managed to send me to a strange place I'd never been to before. I didn't actually feel hypnotised, but then I didn't feel quite normal either. Well, maybe this is what being hypnotised is like.
So if you're ready, 1, 2, 3. Okay, you've already allowed yourself to go through the door, have you?
Yeah, but I can't see anything. But I felt boiling hot.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
It's quite warm where you are then, is it?
Yeah, that's the main sensation I've got. Is I'm really hot.
The area where we are now, is this, you say it's hot, but is it inside or outside?
I think it's inside, but it's quite near the elements. It's, I don't know, it's, I think, actually, that it's a ship.
A ship?
It's
right. Is there any feeling of movement where you are now?
Yeah, I feel a bit sick, actually.
Okay, well, you won't be sick, I can promise you.
Okay.
You will not be sick, I absolutely guarantee that. But you feel it's some form of ship.
Although a lot of the images coming to mind were vague and sketchy, I clearly thought of a group of men on board the ship, and one man was particularly vivid in my mind. His name came to me as William.
What sort of age is
I think he's got a jacket as well.
Oh, he's the only one wearing a jacket? Okay, what colour is his jacket?
Green.
Green.
Velvet.
Yeah. Velvet jacket?
Yeah, but it's really had it.
Has it? Oh.
Well, it's...
Not in the best of conditions.
Well, it doesn't fare very well at sea, I guess.
No. Has he been at sea a long time, do you think?
Well, yeah, all his life, I think.
All his life?
With the odd break, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you your name, how would you reply? What would your name be?
I have no idea. A name did come into my head, I don't know if it's...
Well, would you like to share that name with me?
Peter Macy.
Peter Macy.
That was just the name that came into
a name that came into your head. And how old do you believe Peter Macy is at this time when you're on this ship? How old is Peter Macy?
23. I protect William, I think.
You protect William? Okay. In what way do you protect William?
I don't know. I think it's useful for you to have someone you can trust. You know.
You think it's useful for you to have someone?
I think that's the idea of having someone like me.
Right. You're someone who William would trust then, are you?
Yeah, because you wouldn't always trust the other people you were with.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we're going to leave it there. So you just have a little rest and just relax for a few moments and just breathe nice and gently.
Oh, God.
Right. I think if you could just let yourself go that little bit more, you're really on the verge of doing it extremely well.
I'm really surprised
you
I
are
said
sort of
anything.
holding back.
Well, there were times when I feared that stuff was just coming from just recesses of my memory, but not like memory like I'd lived it, but memory like things I'd read or just things were popping into my head and I was saying them. Actually, I mean, I hate going to sea now. I hate ships. But I get really seasick. But I'm fascinated by the history of kind of seafaring.
Why? Where does the fascination come from?
I just assumed it's kind of random fascination. It's just a romantic period, though, isn't it? It's, as a lady, that might
yes,
appeal.
but as a lady, you could look at the style of ladies living in luxury in big houses in London.
True.
Or houses in the country.
Yeah.
Or riding out on horses. Why would you choose ships? Well, exactly.
I don't know, but yeah.
One has to consider the possibility, and I'm not saying it's any higher than that, one has to consider the possibility that maybe your interest in ships today could be as a result of an experience that happened in the past life.
That was really embarrassing. That was weirdly embarrassing. It was, I have to say, hats off to Tony. First time anyone's ever got anywhere close to actually hypnotising me. So that was remarkable. And it was weird. I mean, I think I felt hypnotised-ish, although I was still, at times, very much more self-aware than at other times. But what was difficult for me coming out of that was the fact that, in a sense, it would be possible, if you wanted to interpret it as being put under hypnosis and then encouraged to fantasize. And I think what worried me about the stuff that was coming out, that I was coming out with, was, I think it was an odd soup of books I've read, movies I've seen. There was a slight embarrassing element of, you know, oh, romantic, piratey, you know. So I feel a bit of an idiot. Anyway, God, I still feel like I'm bright red. That was hugely embarrassing, but curious. Anyway, that's it. Even though I wasn't convinced by my own piratey past life, I did try to see if I could find out anything about Peter Macy, the sailor I'd mentioned under hypnosis. But it wasn't just him that was being elusive. Every time I mention past life regression, reincarnation, people go, oh yeah, I had this amazing story about there's a woman who was regressed and she suddenly knew all this stuff she couldn't possibly have known. And then when I've been looking for these stories, I can't find them. And to be honest, I was beginning to think, are these sort of apocryphal tales? I have found lots of books, but it's every time you scratch the surface of these things, it's quite hard to actually find the people or be sure about what they did and didn't know beforehand. But I think I've got one, I've got this one that I'd really like to follow up. It's quite extraordinary. This lady, Jenny Smedley, she was very depressed and unhappy, and after being regressed, has suddenly undergone a transformation, has huge success and very happy in herself. But just to add another extraordinary dimension, she believes that the person she, in her past life, was married to is now, in this life, the country musician Garth Brooks. So it's a very unusual story. She says when she went back to the house that she believed she used to live in, she'd never been there before, but she apparently was able to tell the owners about a secret room they hadn't found, she said. So we like that sort of thing. That's the sort of thing we want. So I'm definitely going to follow this up. She's got a website as well, which I'm looking at now. Very strange story. Garth Brooks seems to have taken it very well. The next day, I set off to meet Jenny in the Hampshire village that was apparently the site of her former life. So, Jenny, having read your extraordinary book, I was just wondering, can you talk me through it all from the beginning?
Very, very briefly. I was a depressed person I had a wonderful husband, wonderful house, wonderful son, no problems at all, apparently. Every time I was sort of happy, something would hit me and I'd feel like I didn't deserve to be happy. There was something wrong. So this naturally blighted my life, and then one day I was just sitting there, depressed as usual. Somebody came on the television, Garth Brooks, and it was just his face. He was talking, he wasn't singing, didn't know who he was, but in that instant I knew that this depression had just dissipated and that it was never going to come back. But I had no idea what that meant at all. And it took a friend who I said, you know, there must be some connection between me and this person. He lives in another continent, but there's some connection. And she said, well, of course there is. There's a psychic connection between you. There's a link. So I said, but I never met him. And she said, not in this life. And then, of course, it took me about 6 months to go for regression because I knew that it wasn't going to be very nice what I found out. I knew that this euphoria I was feeling was going to be punctured by the story I was going to hear.
In her book Ripples, Jenny tells the story of her past life in 17th century Hampshire. She was Madeline, a 19-year-old from a wealthy family who fell in love with and secretly married Ryan, a young Irish soldier. Her parents didn't approve, and when Ryan is abducted and murdered, she commits suicide. Jenny believes that Ryan's new incarnation is Garth Brooks. Jenny was so convinced by her regression that she travelled 3,000 miles to Nashville in an attempt to meet Garth and tell him her story. What was Garth's reaction?
He was absolutely wonderful.
Really?
He seemed to think it was all fascinating. You've got a picture of him giving me a hug. You know.
No, this is a lovely picture.
After meeting Garth, the most extraordinary thing that happened was that I'd had an abdominal pain. Ever since I was about 14, doctors could never find a cure for it. Met Garth, the pain went. And it actually turned out to be exactly where Ryan Fitzgerald was stabbed.
And according to Jenny, it's rumoured that Garth has a scar in the same place. No. That is extraordinary. Jenny had had an amazing past life experience that had completely changed her life. But despite the powerful connection she obviously felt with Garth Brooks, Madeline and Ryan, she didn't share my obsession with verification.
You know, people are always on about evidence. They want to see records, don't they?
Yeah, they want to verify things.
They do.
But didn't you want to?
No, it never bothered me. It wasn't about that with me. It was about my own personal experience and what happened to me, you know. But yeah, I mean, the trouble is, if you find records, people say, oh, well, you probably looked at them before. And if you don't find them, they say, well, it's not true then.
But I still wanted to see if I could find out anything that would verify Jenny's story about Madeline and Ryan. So I paid a visit to the local history section of the library, but I couldn't find anything. We also tried to contact Garth Brooks to see what he thought about it all, but his representatives declined to comment. God, well, that was a fascinating story. You cannot argue with that. It's an extraordinary story, and I think the thing that one has to bring home most from when you hear it is just what a fabulously positive effect it's had on Jenny's life. What was interesting was that Jenny is not interested in verifying the facts. She doesn't need proof. So it's other people who want proof. And she's right, it's other people who are looking for proof. And yeah, in a sense, why should she look for proof? It's had this effect on her, and in a way that's the end of the story. It's really hard to find proof of this stuff. And although I can imagine evidence that might open my mind further, I'm still not finding any. So many people believe in this. I keep thinking, there's got to be more to find out. And I'm quite sure there is. There's still lots more I want to do in investigating this. I'd now seen quite a few people, and they'd all come up with something, events that sometimes had an intense emotional effect, but no information that could prove this as a verifiable past life memory. I still wasn't sure of actually what was going on. I thought it was time to ask an expert what they thought was happening, so I went to see Professor Chris French.
I was wondering, what do you think is going on when someone is being regressed?
In actual fact, all the research shows that people are essentially producing a narrative that's based on fantasy, imagination, bits and pieces of information they've picked up from various places, and they're kind of reliving that. And they sincerely then believe that they are actually recovering memories of things which actually did take place. But all the evidence suggests that's not in fact what's happening. It's basically a fantasy.
Why do you think so many people do believe in it as a genuine phenomenon?
And there's two reasons. One is just the general reason for believing in reincarnation and find it attractive is just the idea that, you know, we don't die, that in some form we go on. I mean, it's a very comforting belief, and we'd all love to believe that. And it's part of, you know, lots of major religions. So there's that on the one hand. I mean, I think in our kind of modern times, this idea has developed that any of your kind of current psychological problems could be explained in terms of something that happened to you in a past life. It also offers the hope of some kind of solution to the problem, that by identifying it and working through it, that you might be able to solve it. If you believe that that is a genuine explanation, you accept it, and it makes sense to you, then, I mean, given that the problem was psychological in the first place, a psychological solution is quite possibly going to work for you, in which case don't knock it. You know? But on the other hand, as to whether there really is anything in the idea that people really are going back into these past lives, the evidence just isn't there.
I don't really know what to think about that. Well, I do know what I think about that, but I do have to keep an open mind. And also, I've got other things on my mind at the moment, which is that I've just found out that for my final challenge, I've got to hypnotise someone, actually properly hypnotise them, and hopefully have them come up with details of a past life that we can explore. How is that going to happen? I can't imagine myself hypnotising anyone. Oh, God.
Join me after the break when I try to hypnotise former Hollyoaks actor and Ultimate Combat champion Alex Thorne.